Welcome into the Our Coaching Network Coaching Podcast, our first edition of the 2025 year. He is Furman head coach Clay Hendrix. I'm John Brice with FootballScoop.com. Thanks for joining this morning. And Coach, we've been talking about having you on this podcast for quite a while now, maybe all the way back to last year's coaching convention. So I appreciate you hopping on and visiting with us.
Well, I appreciate the invite. Certainly good to be with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll just dive right in. And speaking of diving in, that's what you're about to be doing. You just told me you start spring camp here in just a little over a week or so. You've always been an early spring camp guy, I believe, since you took over at your alma mater, Furman. What do you believe are the benefits of that?
Well, I like having the time after spring to really focus in the kind of the bigger, faster, stronger speed development, before we get out of school. And, we'll try to continue the lifting, throughout the spring, but it's a little different when you're practicing. So I don't know. I felt like recovery time with some injuries and, we're coming off a year where we had a brutal injury list and, so trying to get some of those guys back, but a little more recovery time before we go play again, and a little extra time in the weight room.
Do you find maybe also when you're able to start a little bit earlier, is there more carryover? Is there more retention as you go along?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it just kind of depends who you got returning. We do have a bunch of kids returning, and hadn't lost a staff member either, so that's been a good thing. I think so. Anytime you can have, the retention. Makes it a little easier just to transition. It does to give us a little bit of time to, we're always looking at some things we want to change and look at doing a little different. Um, but and we'll break it up with our spring break. We have an early spring break here, maybe the first full week of March.
Okay.
So probably like to get about half of it done before, about half of it done afterwards.
You led me right into already one of my topics, and you indicated no staff turnover, and I can't remember since you got to Furman that you've not had staff turnover, whether it's been a Drew Cronick or a Chad Staggs or a George Quarles or Dwayne or some of those guys. Number one, I guess, would be how proud are you to have been able to help guys develop their careers along the way? I think Perico Wright is another guy in that mix, and then what
Yeah.
do you think the benefits are that you do have some consistency from the top down going into this 25 season?
Well, and obviously it always helps. I don't know. You talk sometimes about what players you got returning. If you thought they're pretty good players, they're good to have back. But I don't know. This staff's been phenomenal. Really, been really fortunate ever since I came back. This is starting year 9. I don't know. I learned. I think Troy Calhoun, when I was in Air Force, probably learned this as much from Troy. You hire bright guys and that are good workers, and even sometimes those are a little bit, little maybe a little more inexperienced than you want. But those smart guys, they kind of figure it out. And and I think going forward for them, trying to create opportunities for them. I always tell them every year, hey, work as hard as you can for us. You get an opportunity. If I can help you, I'll call for you. And I think you also try to make it as good a situation for them. So when they get opportunities, they got to think long and hard about that move you make. And sometimes it's a no-brainer, sometimes just financially, sometimes there's a little bit of a belief in there that you got to make a move to make a move, and I can see that a little bit, but I also think that's one of my responsibilities. So, but try to make it a really good environment for them to work. We don't guard desks around here, so we go home. We like happy wives and happy kids, and I think when that's the case and you can go home, you're happier, you coach better, and when those opportunities do come along, you think long and hard, about what something's worth to you, and I think that's probably helped us, but been really fortunate to have some really good staff members here.
Yeah, plus Greenville's a pretty great place to live. Anywhere you got a Hall's Chop House and a Yeehaw, there's some pretty good food to be had. So that's not bad as well. Bobby Lamb likes to talk about his coaching tree, but you got a pretty darn impressive coaching tree as well, as we just sort of touched on there. If you could go over a few of those guys, I can't keep up with where all some of your guys are now, but if you don't mind ticking off a few of them, and we'll apologize in advance if you miss anybody. But I just want people to get a grasp for how people have come through Furman and bought into your vision back in 2017, and now where they've been able to go.
Well, I think if you go back as far as, Furman, I think just well before me. I mean, I guess I'm part of still the lineage that Coach Sheridan, a little bit Coach Baker, even though I wasn't really with Coach Baker, and goes back quite. So we got a lot of guys coaching lots of places, and but just really the time I've been here. In fact, I just saw Brian Bratton was by here 2 days ago. Brian's up with the Colts and doing great, and
Yeah.
Brian's one of those guys, that played for us when I was here, and uh, I was trying hard to get him to the academy when I was there, and then I got back, had a chance to keep him, and Brian had a lot of opportunities, and I think even when he finally took that job, I think he thought long and hard about it. He really did. And
Yeah.
I think I finally told him, man, you got to do this, this opportunity. But Brian's there, and I mean, I think about a couple of those young Air Force guys I hired, that were captains and got out of the Air Force, and Kenny Lamendola's back now at the academy coaching linebackers. And, one of the things I'm really proud of, Pete Lusk, my first OL coach who had played for me out there, Pete was with me the first 4 years and decided to go to law school and made a career move, which I think was awesome for him. Pete just graduated from Harvard Law.
Wow.
So I said, good for him. He's actually now working back in Denver. Um, so had a number of those guys. Chad Staggs, I hired in there the first year. Chad's been a number of places now. Has had some really good opportunities. And then Dwayne, a young guy we hired, and Dwayne's had a lot of opportunities. And he's I think he sees a lot of the same things I see about this place and maybe even this profession, a little bit. And then obviously what, Drew Cronick, I had a chance to hire Drew my first year back. Drew and I had worked together here under Bobby, and then had a chance to hire Drew that first year. And man, what a great job he did. And it's funny, we kind of blended some things we were doing with some stuff he'd been doing, and that was kind of what he was doing this year at the Naval Academy.
Yeah.
Just did a phenomenal job there. And we talked about Carrico Wright and Rod Johns down in Indiana, and golly, I know Addison Williams has been at Central Florida, and golly, I know I'm leaving somebody out there. But there have been, been really fortunate in that regard. David Sims, I just saw David's back at James Madison.
Yeah.
Antonio Wilcox is up at UConn, and young guy that just had the best year they've had. So no, that's pretty cool. We take a lot of pride in that. I think, Billy Napier obviously is a guy that, with our group that had played here when we were here, and Billy's been a phenomenal supporter of ours. So we got a lot of guys doing a lot of really good things, lots of places.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think Rod Ojong maybe played for my colleague Doug Samuels at FootballScoop, and then obviously know Brian Bratton well. He's a two-time FootballScoop Minority Rising Star honoree, one of the truly good people in the industry. You referenced you're going into year 9 back at your alma mater where you played on the offensive line in the early 1980s. 7 of the 8 seasons you've already completed have been the full seasons. You had the COVID year snuck in there, but 5 of those 7 seasons you finished first or second in the SoCon. What do you attribute to that sort of consistency and being an O-line guy who's about doing it the right way day after day? How much pride do you take in that consistency in your program?
Well, I think had a really good staff. I think it obviously goes back there. We've had good players. I think even when it's interesting when I first came back, I spent 10 years at the academy. And things have dropped off here for whatever reason. You're trying to figure. We got a unique place. We have a unique kid we can recruit academically, real similar to what I had at the academy. So there wasn't much of an adjustment for me. But when I came back, it kind of initially started out, what can we do just to get competitive? And that was really Drew. I loved what Drew did with his wing tee background, and then blending some stuff we had done here traditionally and some stuff we'd done at the academy. And I don't know. We like year 1, we had a quarterback. If you got a quarterback, you always got a chance. And we had a guy and had a couple good. It ended up probably going a little better than we thought. I think I'm kind of like you. Those 3 years that we finished second, the last week we're playing for it.
Right.
Had an opportunity to win it, so a little bit of what could have been, and it's kind of like when you get done in seasons and you look back, the ones you usually remember the ones you didn't get done. Um, but I don't know. I just think we've been probably pretty consistent. I think attribute a lot of that to our kids, just the quality and character of the people that we have here. I think both staff and player, and we have a really bunch of bright kids that love to play football. And we're not going to be the most talented group. We're just not. I mean, I just think it's the nature of who we were able to recruit. From an academic standpoint, but we have talent. I'm always careful to sell our guys, but just attention to detail, discipline. I think it's won us a lot of games, and there's sometimes it's hurt us a little bit. But I think it's maybe a combination of all those factors. And, I think understanding the place you're at, I think I do understand our place and, what we need here to be successful and what our challenges are, because I don't care where you are, there's challenges and problems. And we certainly have our share here too. But, I think that's kind of that job deal. You got to decide what problems you truly want to deal with. And then college football day, there's lots of problems. So I think maybe it's whoever can navigate that the best.
You're going to eventually lead me into one of my upcoming questions, and that is the state of college football. We won't go there yet. To your point about the NFL, Brian Bratton, a guy that played in the NFL and played in the CFL. You've had some other guys since you've taken over as head coach who have been invited to the combine, invited into NFL camps. So you're right, there is and has been really good talent coming through Furman, and I think that's certainly helped with the consistency of the program. You touched on having a great number of guys coming back this year. If you could expound on that a little bit, what have you got coming back on offense and defense? And I know it's early as you're just getting ready to start spring camp, but what do you like about this team and see that makes they're going to bounce back in 25?
Well, I think we do. It was I just had a conversation a day or two ago. We had almost, I think it was 20 surgeries last fall. It was kind of like crazy stuff. We had kids we thought we were redshirting, 5 or 6, and they were starters by the end of the year. And, crazy number of turnovers. So, I mean, we were our own worst enemy sometimes. But it was a difficult year in a lot of ways, but we returned a lot of kids. I do think we've turned some talent. We've got 3 quarterbacks now that have played. Who's got the 3 quarterbacks returning anywhere in the country? True freshmen. We started most of the year and really talented. Did some great stuff. Sometimes he played like a true freshman, but really talented. They returned 4 guys up front. Maybe as good a receiving group as we've ever had any in my time here. Really like that group. A lot of guys back defensively again that have played. Probably had more injuries. We had lost our entire secondary from the year before, and then we lost everybody but one to injury this year. Most of them before we even played a game. So I like the returns. I like the way our kids are working. Again, I think there's some talent, and we got some depth now that we didn't have before. Now a lot of it's still younger. I kind of enjoy the development aspect of football, which is again one of those things that's kind of disappearing a little bit. I think we can still do that. I think we are the ultimate developmental program. We need to recruit, retain, and develop kids. We have not lost a lot of kids even in these few years, and it seems like more of the kids we've lost have been graduate kids that we really just didn't have a way to keep them here. We've gotten a few more graduate options now. We're a really hard place to transfer into. So I think we have maybe 3 transfers on our team. Now we do have some grad transfer guys. Those guys we've been able to plug a hole here or there, and those have been good for us. But that's just kind of how the way we have to do it. And I know things are changing and people say you can't do that. I just still think that's largely how we're going to have to do things here. I really think when you look at it, you look at people's rosters. A lot of people hadn't even updated their rosters to 25 yet, but I don't know. I think we weathered it better than most. So I think again, got returners. They're doing the right things. I thought they were doing the right things a year ago, practice wise. We didn't play as well as we needed to.
To your point about weathering it better than most, and I'm sure you see the numbers all the time. You may not know them right off the top of your head. I didn't know them until I was preparing to talk to you this morning. But 2024, I think more than 11,000 just football players entered the NCAA transfer portal. When you hear that number and you think about where the game is right now versus where it's been and where it might be going, kind of what goes through your mind and what do you think about the system right now and can it be sustained?
I don't think it can be sustained. I don't know. It's just kind of sad. I mean, you watch. I know there are going to be continually be changes because every time they come up with something new, there's other things you have to deal with. So I think the way it is right now, the 6 or 7 people, I guess, that can pay the most. I just think it's NFL football without a salary cap.
Yeah.
And so the people that can pay the most are going to be. I mean, is that what you want to see? Is that what you truly want to see? Um, I don't know. It's kind of sad to see what has happened. I think the transfer portal itself is simply a mechanism. We used to have to sign releases, um, but the problem's been just the multiple transferring, there was no, somebody had to sit out. It'd be a simple rule if you had to sit out, or you got a one-time exception, you had to sit out. That eliminate a lot of it. This NIL agent thing is I think a really, really bad thing. A lot of shady stuff going on. They've got to get a handle on that. I'm not sure anybody knows about this opting in, opting out roster caps. I was sitting in the head coaches meeting at the convention,
Yeah.
and there were a couple of NCAA guys. One was an attorney. Craig Bowles in there, and we were meeting. I think it was Monday the afternoon. The FBSs were going to meet Tuesday morning, and they started. The first thing they brought up was the window, the portal windows. And they asked immediately who was in favor of 2 windows versus 1. And I think our room was I don't know if it was unanimous, but pretty clear everybody wanted 1 window. And, they were talking about having a month-long window. And, it's proven fact they go in the first couple of days. Well, they stood there and said, they said, well, just for an example, they said the SEC is adamant about keeping 2 windows. They're adamant. And so I don't know if it's 16 hours later they're meeting. And from what I was told, they had a vote initially, and the vote was unanimous that they all go to 1 window. And I think there's somebody told me there were 13 of the 16 SEC coaches there. So, we were told one thing and 16 hours later it's totally different. I just think that's a little bit of the world because I don't think really people know. But there's got to be some recourse to the student athletes, or scholarships now, contracts, where people have to pay buyouts, to players. I know people like to compare the coaches to the players, but now coaches get fired and coaches have contracts, and coaches aren't good. They get rid of them, and but I don't know. It's just kind of, I think our level is a little unique still. I can't say it's that way everywhere. And I've got a lot of friends around here that support a lot of the big schools, but I can sense it a little bit in them. They're growing a little weary of it. And, these people are giving all this money, or they're just going to continue to give it. I don't know.
Yeah. What's the return on investment and how long do people throw good money after bad before the changes? That you're too polite to say it, but I don't mind to say it. You touch on roster sizes, and I think we all know, or certainly the majority of our audience here today probably knows that the talk is a 105-man roster at the FBS level. What do you think the ramifications are at the FCS level? What would that mean for the Furmans and the members of the SoCon and the other perennial powers at the FCS level?
Well, there's some thought that, okay, if whatever state school here, if let's say they're normally carrying 125 kids and now they've got to go to 105, that's 20 kids that have to find a home. I think some people naturally think, well, that's going to be 20 kids you're going to have a chance to maybe get on your roster. Well, maybe. I don't know. I think sometimes those kids maybe aren't good enough for us. I don't know. And, when are they going to tell them? When are they going to let them know? So I don't know, but I guess it does maybe the fact that they can't pay 125 kids something. I think that was really kind of the main justification in it was to not have 125 kids that either getting NIL money or whatever. So they're going 105. You know, our AD asked me where I thought. I don't think our league, I think right now the Southern Conference, and again, it may change tomorrow, but my understanding it was going to be a school by school basis. We weren't going to do anything initially as a conference. I think I saw the CAA just said they were going to do it as a conference, but I'm not for it because nobody's shown me where it helps me. You know, we're an expensive, hard to get into place. We've really worked hard to build our roster, um, you know, with you know PWOs, and a lot of those kids have been good players for us, and we worked hard at it. And I just didn't want to get into a now, the more you add, the more it costs you. You know, it's expensive to operate, but I just didn't want to get into a head counting game. You know, when a kid has a chance to be a pretty good player and can help you. You know, I mean, if we'd have been in that situation a year ago with as many injuries we had, we would have had some challenges practicing.
Right.
We just the number of guys we had out, and I don't know what that number is going to be, but nobody's told me anything that makes me think that it's worth it's worth doing it. You know, they said, well, you know, you can revenue share. I said, well, I don't know a lot of revenue that we're sharing, you know, as a league, and you know, so I don't know. Again, it's really going to be interesting to see what happens.
He is Furman head coach Clay Hendrix, former Furman offensive lineman, also coached at NC State, Furman, and then climbed all the way to assistant associate head coach at Air Force under Troy Calhoun. I'm John Brice. This is the Our Coaching Network podcast. Don't want to take up too much of your time, but I could sit here and talk ball with you all day, Coach. I do want to ask, as we've seen the impact of the portal, and we talk about 11,000 football players going in just across the NCAA divisions over the 2024 year, are you seeing maybe a positive impact at the high school level for FCS recruiting? Are you seeing more guys that maybe otherwise might be FBS players that are sort of getting left behind, or maybe even getting jilted at the last minute, that are becoming FCS players, even if only for the first 2 or 3 years of their career?
I've seen that a little bit. I mean, I know we're tomorrow here. We're probably just going to sign a couple of guys. I think we signed 10 in December. Um, you know what? And I have seen a few guys that you would think wouldn't be available maybe about this time. Maybe they got jilted in December and then
Right.
went around for the second Sunday. So I have seen a little bit of that. I have seen a little bit more of an urgency in the first cycle for kids to be more committable, uh, rather than because I think a lot of them think if I wait for the second day, I may not have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
Um, now, and it's interesting to see. Even I know schools of even in the transfer world, just talking kids into transferring to their level. Hey, and play well here, and you can get the next. You can go get the next one next year. I just can't. I could never tell a kid that, but I know a lot of people have been doing it because kids told me they told them that. But now I've seen it maybe a little bit more. I think for us again, our pool's a little smaller just because of the academic side of it. Um, but I have seen maybe a few more guys. Now you got to continue to keep them at your school and develop. And again, I think that goes back to getting the right kid here to begin with.
Again, he is Clay Hendrix, Furman head coach. I am John Brice, FootballScoop.com on the Our Coaching Network podcast. One more quick question on that specific topic, and that is you've made it very clear you're going to have a program that lives and breathes with high school recruiting. As you visit with high school coaches all around your state, all around the South, and the regions that you guys recruit, a lot of guys that are in coaching for all the right reasons, not making life changing money. How much sense do you get that they appreciate the programs that are still out there committed to recruiting high school kids and building up their college programs kind of organically like that?
Well, I think they do, and I mean, I think it's been eye opening for them as well. So they've got to do a good job of educating their kids. It's one thing for me to tell that to a young man we're recruiting and his parents, but obviously he hadn't known me nearly as long as he's known his high school coach, and so I think with those that have good relationships with their high school coaches do a good job of educating them about the reality of really kind of what's in play now. And again, they're being pulled lots of directions, and this NIL agent stuff is really that was really an eye-opening thing to me when I first saw it, or first heard about it. Because my first thought was, well, this can't be legal. But right now there doesn't seem to be a lot of rules. The rules continually change. And then I don't know until people are truly held accountable, for the tampering. You hear about the tampering, and then that question came up, I know, in our meeting, and even the NCAA guy said, it's like anything else in court, you're gonna have to prove it, and how long is that gonna take, and so it's I don't know. Still lots of questions.
Yeah, well, to that point, the Tennessee High School Association is voting today on a one-time transfer rule, and if you talk to people, be it coaches or others around the state involved in prep athletics, you'll see they're voting on it today to keep it from becoming a legislative matter. So, to your point, there's still a lot of questions at a lot of levels, and a lot that's happening now at the college level continues to trickle down to the prep levels as well. All right, last two questions, I promise, here on the Our Coaching Network podcast. Again, Clay Hendrix, Furman head coach, John Brice with FootballScoop.com. We always try to ask a couple of fun ones. So, early on in your career, especially maybe when you're a GA at NC State, you're probably not just living off NC State GA money. So, what's maybe a random job or a funny memory of just making ends meet early in your coaching career?
Oh wow. Well, I tell you what, I, 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 I I have a good memory. Sometimes I guess that can be a bad thing, but I
Yeah.
was living in those days I think I was living, they called the Wolfpack Inn.
Okay.
It was no motel that they had converted into at that time, I guess it was the athletic dormitory, and I was living there. And Robbie Caldwell, who
Yeah.
had been my position coach, and he was who I was GAing with. He was single, young single guy, and he was living up above me. I think he was in one of the suite. I guess a motel suite is if you could have it in those days. But I'll say is, I think they took my rent out, whatever that was. I don't really even know, and I think I made $168 a month. And I don't really know how I was doing it. I know Coach Caldwell was great. He took kid. He paid for a lot of meals for me. I know that. Uh, but I don't know. I was there for about a year and a half, 2 seasons, and before I got hired back here, I was 24 years old, coaching guys that I'd played with, and uh, I've always been around really good people. They took good care of me.
All right. All right. Good people. It's a four-man golf swat. It's you, it's Bobby Lamb, it's Trey Lamb, and George Quarles. Who's the A golfer? Who's the D golfer? And where are you playing?
Wow, Trey Lamb's going to have to be the A golfer now. I wasn't even going to let him in the group. If
But
he's
see,
in the group,
now you're feeding into him. He's already
well,
been on this podcast and bragged that he's the best college football golfer coach in America. So now you've just fed into that.
he's, I don't know. What is he, about 25 years old? I know he's older than that, but he's about 30, but
He doesn't look it.
I would let him in my group if he was on my team. He'd not be the one you're going to be playing against. You're going to have to get quite a few shots. Uh, I don't know if I got to say it, George and I, we're pretty even if we're both getting to play. We're both getting to play that. We played a lot of golf in the time he was here. We had a lot of 9-hole rounds. Uh, I think I might put Bobby Lamb in the basement in the group.
I
Uh,
like that.
but that'd be a fun group to play with. And shoot, heck yeah, if you had some kind of team, you'd want Trey on there. I don't know that I've ever actually played with Trey. Trey's dad and I grew up together. He's, great, great golfer. Didn't really start playing until he got almost in his 20s. Um, but yeah, I think Trey, I think I'm not surprised Trey probably told you he was the best one there too. So I've seen a few of those comments he's made, and I was at an event with him last year. We didn't play together, uh, but there's something about those young guys. I don't know. When I was a young guy, I played a lot of golf. I played my whole life. We didn't hit it like those guys do now. So uh, that'd be a fun group to play with, though, at least.
Those 9-hole rounds that you and GQ used to play, those were game planning sessions. Some of those don't even count. You were working the whole time, drawing plays on your scorecard and everything.
Well, George was still, he was still recovering from that second hip, which I think he actually just had to get fixed again. But so I had a little bit of an advantage of him on that. But no, that was some fun. I kind of miss those days.
Yeah. I tell you what, if you get a foursome that if you round up the foursome that I just mentioned, let me know and I'll just come write about it for Football Scoop. How about that?
Well, there would be a lot of
That's what I want.
there'd be a lot of BS comments made throughout that time. So or throughout that round. So that no, that I'll make sure we do that.
Yeah, that talk would be far more interesting than the golf, and the golf would be entertaining. So, anyway, all right. I have abused your time, so I apologize for that. But he is Clay Hendrix, always gracious, always good to catch up with you. Congrats on the consistency and success you've had at your alma mater. 6.5 months, more or less, until you open that 25 season against William and Mary again. Clay Hendrix, Furman head coach, thanks so much for joining us today on the Our Coaching Network podcast. Again, I'm John Brice. Clay, thanks a lot.
Thank you, John. It's great seeing you.
Yes, sir, buddy. Take care.